My name is Craig Picken. I'm an executive recruiter. More than a decade ago, I started my practice for one purpose: to use my experience as a former military aviator, business jet sales executive, and P&L leader to help aviation and aerospace companies and their executives be fast, adaptable, and strategic. I do these podcasts to inspire and inform, but more importantly, they are a focused platform to help business leaders grow. Welcome to the Aerospace Executive Podcast. Hey, welcome back to the Aerospace Executive Podcast. I am thrilled to have Alex Krutz on with me. Alex is managing partner for Patriot Industrial Partners. Patriot is a conglomerate of, I guess I'll say conglomerate. It's a bunch of manufacturing supply chain experts out of some of the world's best aerospace and defense companies, Honeywell, GE, Boeing, and they help smaller and middle market aerospace manufacturing companies get better. So we're going to have a good conversation today, talk about the challenges of 2021 and how some of these companies are going to get through it. So Alex, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Craig. This is great. I really appreciate it.
From the great state or the great country or the great Republic of California. I don't know what I call it right now, but
you got it.
It's thanks for coming on. So you guys got about 20 experts in your organization, and they're all retired. A lot of retired Boeing, GE people, and they're helping these smaller companies get better. Obviously, COVID did a number on the middle market folks, probably worse than the tier ones and the OEMs. So. Talk about the challenges. Talk about some of the challenges that we know the devastation. So talk about the challenges that a lot of these folks have coming out of this, and how you're helping them.
Yeah. So I think and again, Craig, thanks for having me on. I think this is a really important topic for our supply chain. When we look at aircraft that are built, somewhere around 70% of the aircraft are supply chain components, right? So the supply chain is a very important part of the aerospace and defense sector. I would also, articulate that it's a well-connected and intertwined community, right? So, when you have successes and failures, it can affect, if you will, kind of like domino effect in other, other suppliers, right? And so, whereas one supplier might not be a direct to an OEM, they might have a lot of content at tier one or tier two, and that might cause a problem for the aircraft builders, right? So there's a lot of interconnectivity in the supply chain, and that's why this is such a critical time for our industry. So I think to answer your question, we saw with COVID, we saw a lot of, I would call it very large scale events, last year. COVID being obviously the primary one, which led to the wide body, demand decrease. It's led to international travel decrease. And we also saw, unfortunately, the grounding of the 737 MAX and trying to get the recertification going on there. So I think that there were a variety of events last year that were, impactful, not only economically to our country as well as others, but to the aerospace and defense, and primarily the commercial aerospace supply chain. So, one of the things that I was kind of looking at and seeing within the middle market, the lower middle market, companies is really a liquidity issue, right? From that, I would say that these smaller companies, middle market, lower middle market, don't have the access to credit facilities like these larger tier one and OEMs do. The banks and lenders are more risk adverse when it comes to smaller companies, whether it's because of, fewer assets or, more risk and potential for, perceived failure, versus the backstop of these larger publicly held companies that can get access to capital or debt in a variety of ways. So that's really, leading into really 2021. the lower volume situation, right? And so these events of last year really have constrained or lowered the production volume coming out of the OEM, especially Boeing and Airbus to a great extent, of lower volumes, right? And so lower volumes in the supply chain means less sales. Less sales means, you know, cutting staff. It means cutting inventory. It means making financial decisions that could really challenge a business in the future. But when you know, with the problems that, you know, some people see that on the way down, as far as decreasing volumes and production output, people think that's the hard part. And yes, it's hard and it's difficult, but really what we see from a manufacturing standpoint and a supply chain standpoint is really the coming back up is as hard, if not harder, than going down, right?
Yeah, I've heard that. You know, a lot of people say, hey, I cut, you know, I did all the cutting I could.
Absolutely.
But it's like turning off lights is easy. I mean, you flip a switch, but you're turning them back on again. That's the big challenge I have in the industry in a lot of different things. You lose skilled workers. You lose them to other industries. You lose them to retirement. You lose them to a whole host of things. I was talking to one CEO late last week, and they're trying to go through this big recall thing. 700 recall notices. I'm like, it's great that you're calling them back. How many of them want to come? You know, so it's a huge, I mean, I don't think that the people, you know, when everybody was cutting, or, you know, the government, or, you know, whomever, you know, understood that when we're cutting, you know, a lot of it's you're just not going to get it all back. It's going to take a long time. And that's a huge challenge in the industry.
In our business, Craig, you know, we call that the learning curve, right? So the learning curve going back up, you know, training new employees, onboarding, and where you can't recall those certain, you know, skilled talent folks. And that learning curve is very expensive and it's hard, right? Causes sometimes mistakes, scrap, excess inventory usage. So that's definitely a challenge, is that kind of upward swing.
Yeah.
But the other things that aren't necessarily seen in that, you know, kind of upward, as we'll start to see, you know, and I guess my glass is half full, and to say that in Q3 and Q4, as you know, more vaccines go out, you know, more people have, and we're closer to community, you know, perhaps with COVID, and we start seeing that ability to get out and start traveling, and demand increases, both business and leisure, which will come back. The supply chain has to get ahead of that now, right? So the supply chain, like we just talked about, has to hire people and you know, train them. One of those challenges from a cash standpoint is those companies have had some relief through this PPP program and the government's government support, but that's going to probably go away, if not this round, in the next couple months, where maybe 50% of payrolls were being taken care of by this supplemental payments.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, to pay the same workforce that you had, in effect, it's kind of doubled back to what nominal is, right?
Oh, hey, look, in our industry, I'm going to tell you right now, anybody who's a shareholder in an airline or an aerospace company needs to be thanking their lucky stars, because the government could have easily wiped out the shareholders. I mean, you think about United, Delta, American, etc. You know, shareholders take the risk. You know, company goes bankrupt for whatever reason. You know, and you think about how the PPP money has really saved the industry in a lot of ways. I mean, it's like the only reason we have an aerospace industry, I think, moving forward, is because a lot of PPP money.
Yeah, absolutely, and it saves some jobs, and and we talked a little bit about you know, the interconnectivity of the commercial market and our defense, right? So it's a national defense issue, right? So a lot of these same companies in the middle and lower middle market, you know, produce parts as they do for the 787 or A320. They're also, or the 787, any of these commercial platforms, they're also making it for the F-35, right? Making it for the legacy F-18, F-15s, right? You know, for the new bomber program, or space satellites. So all of these, you know, there's a lot of interconnectivity when it comes to the commercial and defense side. So that PPP money was timely, and I think it was well spent to make sure that, payrolls could stay as close to intact as possible. Obviously,
Right.
there was some cutting that needed to be done because of lower volumes. You still have to.
Yeah, you think about it, but
Business.
it's like, the Partnership for Success out of Boeing. Yeah, that was pretty brutal on the suppliers. I mean, it was, we're going to partner for success. No, you're gonna help ensure. Look, we think you make too much money. I mean, I won't mince words on this one. It was Boeing saying to the suppliers, we think you make too much money compared to us, so we're going to do a little income, a little wealth distribution here. That hurt a lot of your small guys. I mean, at the end of the day, that hurt a lot of small guys. And then all of a sudden, the max gets grounded, and COVID comes along, and then their credit facilities get tightened. So you've got this tier of producer that, now all of a sudden, I had one company say, hey, they wanted to extend their payment terms to me to 60 days. I know a major tier one. I got a friend of mine who's buried into a major tier one, and they want 180 days.
Yeah.
It's like basically, hey, why don't you finance our supply chain for us? It's
Exactly,
like,
yeah.
Now, if I'm a small widget supplier with 200 employees out in Kansas somewhere, or Illinois, man, that 60 or 180 days, that hurts. I got to make pay. And then the bank doesn't want to finance me, or, I'm going to Bruno to get a high interest loan to finance, my receivables. How do we move beyond all that?
Yeah, so let's take kind of as an industry norm right now, 90 days to the tier ones and OEM. There's some at 60 and some up to 120, like you said, but let's do some math here, right? Because you're absolutely right. If you look at but if you start to back off, it usually takes in some of that widget manufacturer. Let's say it takes another 90 days in their factory to build, right?
Mm-hmm.
You put on 90 days of payment, then you back off 90 days to build it, and then that raw material required another 90 days to order, right? I'm just very rough numbers, right? So we're looking at 270 days, right? From the date that cash is outlaid to the date that you're receiving that money from your customer, right?
Yep.
And again, there's, some are shorter, some are longer, but if we were to think of that, really the cycle for, general aerospace products is right around, 6 to 8 months of cash conversion, right? Again, back to this liquidity issue, that as this ramp up happens, Craig, because you're absolutely right, is part of that, PFS and these longer payment terms is really stringing it out for the lower middle market. And it's a really big challenge to have your cash conversion cycle at plus 6 months up to the 8 or 9 month mark, right? From, cash outlay. And oh, by the way, you paid for material, it's WIP, and you're paying employees, right? And then you're paying for logistics and freight because of FOB and other standards that are out there. So you're outlaying all this cash, right?
Yeah.
And it's taking you upwards of 9 months to receive those, to receive that cash. So that's why this ramp up in Q1 or Q2 to start preparing for Q3, Q4 as those OEMs and tier one start putting out those purchase orders. That's going to put a tremendous strain in these next couple quarters on the middle and lower market.
I'm going to talk the political situation where Mr. Biden thinks we're all getting rich over here too. It's anyway, that's my political. That'll be my quick political quip there. It's like, whoa. It makes my head hurt when you think about, here's some guy or some small company, 100 million in revenues, 50 million. All of a sudden now they're 10 million in the hole or more. And they're trying to finance it all on, thinking that maybe I'll get paid in 9 months. That's a very hard story to tell. So what happens? Do the OEMs who can get credit, do they start loaning money to their suppliers? Or do they, do they give them some low interest loans to their suppliers to keep them around? Do they cut them loose? Is there a lot of consolidation that's about ready to happen? What's going to happen?
Yeah, I think a couple things, and not in any particular order, but there in the past when volumes were higher, for an example, in 737 when it was at 47, 52, a month, there was a lot of dual sourcing going on, right? So multiple suppliers did parts, right? And that's, produced
Right.
parts, for example, Boeing or tier ones. And that was a risk reduction strategy, right? So if one supplier had a problem, they could always ramp up another one very quickly and increase the volume. But it costs those OEMs and tier ones money to have dual source supply, especially at very low volumes. That's why on defense programs, right? Like, maybe not so much F-35, but like the lower volume defense programs that are still in production, usually only have one supplier per part because it's expensive both to qualify and also to maintain multiple suppliers on parts. So we're going to start seeing it on the commercial programs from dual sourcing to single sourcing start happening, right? And when that single sourcing starts to happen, for lack of better terms, winners and losers are picked, right? By some of these bigger OEMs and tier ones. And I'm not trying to say that in a bad or negative way, but you lose a work statement and it goes to somebody else, whatever reason, you're losing out on work, right? I think that's that's definitely one challenge that we're seeing there. So I don't know if that answered your question from kind of one of the things that we're going to see.
Look, I mean, but the issue now is there's risk in your supply chain. You cut it to one supply. It's kind of like the old adage, if you owe the bank $100, the bank owns you. If you owe them 100 million, you own the bank. Now all of a sudden you got one supplier making a critical widget or a critical part. Who owns who at that point?
So you also asked about, in coming back to that, about the financing, right? I think that there's some critical suppliers like the Boeings and others of the, tier ones that will come in and do, I don't know if it's so much as loans as it's more of kind of like prepayments, right? For future deliveries. And we'll probably see that on very long lead times, like castings and forgings, mechanical assemblies, that require multiple layers, fracture critical, assemblies that require, multiple testing or, processes, and also multiple layers of bill of material bombs, right? Of being created. So I think that we'll probably see some advanced payments. I'm not sure that OEMs and tier ones will get into the lending, because again, financing is obviously not their forte, but I think they're going to have to get creative with lenders and other investors. I think that private equity is going to play a big part in the middle market when it comes to maybe the OEMs and tier ones have to help broker some consolidation. I think so we talked about dual sourcing to single sourcing. We talked about probably like some prepayments and easing up on the payment terms, right? That's kind of leg number two. And probably leg number three is the consolidation. And it's going to be hard, but I think that there's going to be some companies that probably on their own aren't going to be able to, manage on the lower volumes for the next couple of years. And there might have to be some, like-minded thought process and consolidation amongst suppliers. Again, where it's painful and it's unfortunate, but probably some consolidation is going to happen.
Yeah, and the challenge there becomes then when things start to pick up. People got to be able. Look, this is a probably 6, 7, 8, 10 year issue that's going to have to it's going to take, I think, almost a decade to clear out the logjam when you think about the ramifications of it. We'll look back and go, gee, that sucked. I hope we never see it again. That's kind of what my hope is, but it's going to take, like you're going to see this effects of it for a long time, which is interesting because I was talking to another fella and he's on, he's out selling engine MRO and, they're like, hey, look, we got crushed, not because we couldn't do the work, but because we couldn't get the parts, GE and Pratt and Rolls and all those fellas. They were affected by COVID too. They had to lay off people, or they had to do work stoppages, or they had to accommodate the pandemic. And now there's a lot. Now the long lead time parts are. So you're going to see some benefits, I think, there on the serviceable material side of the house. So it's almost like a puzzle now. It's kind of it makes my head hurt.
Well, back and to your point you were making a bit ago is when there's consolidation and factories close, or abilities and capabilities are lost, that's capacity loss, right?
Right.
As the ramp up happens, right, machines and people that were, readily available to do that work beforehand might be there when it comes back, right? So that in and of itself, drives a lot of challenge in the supply chain to start ramping back up, right? Then all of a
Yeah.
sudden there becomes a demand on limited assets and machines and companies. Prices start going up, right?
Yep.
And delivery commitments stop being met, and then there's probably a risk aversion to additional investment, right? Because there's a lot of investment. You might remember with 737 and 787, a lot of investment made to increase capacity at businesses to support these contracts, and it's not there right now, right? And I hope, I'm optimistic that it'll come back in the years to come, but some of that capacity that was built might have been sold off for liquidity purposes, or consolidated where that plant is no longer there, right? And so that's going to be a challenge, right? When the ramp up starts to happen again.
Yeah, I won't even talk about, now that you talk about the next layer of investment, my fear now is that as the industry starts to get healthy again, I'm going to throw a different wrench into it, and it's all of a sudden now the environmental thing. And you're saying, all right, we've put a big investment just in rebuilding ourselves, and now all of a sudden we've got to go back and make monster investments in motors, APUs, airframes that are maybe, but what do we need to get to? 30-40% more efficiency? Is that real? Is that a real goal? But that's kind of my, that becomes my fear, is that the industry gets choked out by a lot of different political, before it's completely healthy, it gets choked out by a bunch of political concerns that,
Yeah, and if you kind of think about, it kind of gets back to the liquidity and cash, right? Because when you invest in new technologies, right, whether it's fuel efficiency and fuel cells, or electric or hydrogen powered, all these different type of technologies, they cost money to develop, right? There are some government grants and contracts, and some done by defense, but really, commercial platforms that do investing and R&D are out of the company budgets and our cash outlays, right? So we have to also be cognizant about a lot of this commitment to green, which in general, it's a good theory and good practice to try to go towards, but it takes cash and it takes resources to go do that. And so we just have to be mindful about, those commitments and what new technology can be developed as the ramp up happens, with limited resources and some cash constraints that's in the supply chain right now.
So what do people need to be thinking about? What are the two or three things that, what are the 2 or 3 opportunities people have ahead of them, and what are the landmines?
Yeah, I think number one is really kind of looking at modular type factories, right? How can you make your system more adaptable through collaborative type technology and robots, or movable lines, and being flexible, right? How to introduce new programs and new products quickly. How can you make sure you have good design in engineering up front to have a good producible product? So, I'll call it kind of factory of the future type concepts, to be adaptable and nimble. And then I think next thing is really using business intelligence, more specifically predictive analytics, right? So there's some really good tools out there that we work with, and have some partnerships, with some large IT-based companies that provide predictive analytics to show where you're at on future, financial, operational, quality trends, business trends that help you make the right business decisions. So the technology's out there. you know, the lower and the middle market really need to find ways to utilize that technology to make better business decisions for the future. So
is there a way to consolidate all that business? Is there a way to consolidate all that business intelligence and predictive? Is like, could you do a warehouse or a clearinghouse, almost an Amazon, where a lot of these smaller guys can all come to it? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, one of the tools that we've created with a big company called SAP, it's Patriot swap powered by SAP, and so it's 21 key KPIs, and it develops predictive analytics from the business information that the companies have. And it allows us to work with companies out there to help them with their risk mitigation, improving their business, looking at what's coming, because a lot of the companies sometimes don't know, where they may be having a problem that's coming up, and we look at, kind of key, business metrics with them and help avoid some of those challenges. So there's definitely tools out there, IoT and other. There's other firms that have health monitoring and business supply chain solutions. So they're out there. It's just a matter of kind of being proactive and saying how do companies, again, get their hands around predictive analytics and setting up their factories to be modular and adaptable to new products and introducing those new products.
So yeah, I mean, what do we see as we move forward? We see a lot of private equity scooping up. Do we see a lot of distressed deals? Do we see a lot of people that are, hey, I'm muddling along, but I'm open to an acquisition? Do we see a lot of people just kind of die on the vine? What do you see the landscape looking like in 2-3 years?
I see kind of two main themes at this point. Number one is private equity is very actively involved, and I would say two sides of it. There are the private equity teams that got in over the last couple of years when volumes were high and the market pre-COVID was very strong. And there's probably some distress or financial strain within some of those business models now with the lower volumes, right? And multiples and such that were dealt at that point. So I think that there's going to be some refinancing and other type of active financial kind of restructuring there, and then equity firms that are looking at kind of lower valuations, distressed assets, and will put their dry powder to work. And I think that's going to be one of the really positive things for the industry, whereas private equity maybe in the years past had maybe a negative connotation. But my experience with some of the private equity teams is as true value creation, right? And where do they invest, create new technology, create jobs, improve factories and supply chains, try to build customer relationships. So I've had some really positive experiences with some clients and private equity groups on really building better businesses. So I see that kind of two different kind of worlds right now. The private equity, the folks that have been there and in there, and then the new entrants with that new dry powder. And then I think the second category is all about consolidation, right? So we're going to see maybe some of the heavies out of like Japan or France or some of these other maybe larger groups, maybe even here in the US, doing some consolidation of some of the smaller structures businesses. So, I think we're going to see that. I think there's going to be some consolidation within the engine components kind of space as well. And then also we'll see it, in specialty products and processes, like forgings and castings. So I think we're going to see some consolidation, and that may come from maybe better positioned tier 1s and 2s, either privately held or well capitalized, well-run businesses. And also those businesses, I think we're starting to see, even at the very top with, Lockheed Martin and the Aerojet, right?
Right.
Acquisition. So even at the very top, very well-positioned defense companies are probably going to be making some vertical acquisitions, and that was very clearly a vertical vertical integration and acquisition of that to kind of shore up their boosters and rockets and other launch technology that Aerojet provides. So again, not using that as the prime example, but we're going to see some consolidation and vertical integration activity from some of the better and well-positioned companies out there.
You optimistic? You optimistic for the industry? Do you think we have a while to go? Let's end it on this note. How's that sound?
Yeah, obviously I'm long aerospace, right? If we look at the aerospace cycles, they're anywhere from 8 to 10 year cycles. I think this past one before kind of 737 and COVID kind of took it down was a 12-year cycle, the longest one we've had. So they take a bit to work up, and then there's some type of event, either financial or man-made, that or natural that takes and does a reset, unfortunately. So I guess I would end it on, I think I heard maybe a year or two ago that 7% of the world population flew on an airplane in like 2019. I don't even know in 2020 what that is. It's probably lower for obvious reasons. But if you think about 7% is flown on an airplane, that's 93% of the world population has the opportunity to get in a seat and fly. And so if you just think about that, that's a lot of people that could potentially be in the airspace in the years to come. Yeah. So again, is it going to happen soon? Probably not, but I definitely think we're about to start our next cycle. And I think a year and a half from now, we're having a different conversation about growth.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic too. I think all the doom and gloom, look, it's scary.
Yeah.
Watching a hurricane come on down to you is scary. It's scary when it's on top of you, but eventually it passes, and then you're like, okay, we're here. Let's go rebuild. So good. So Alex Krutz, managing partner of Patriot Industrial Partners. How do folks get a hold of you?
So alex.krutz at patriotindustrialpartners.com. You can go onto my LinkedIn at Alex Krutz, and also Patriot Industrial Partners. LinkedIn is there. So
cool.
Yeah, just send me an email or go through the contact page of the website, and I'll get back to you and see how we can kind of work together and
help them out. Awesome. Hey, thanks for coming on today. I enjoyed having you.
Great. Thanks, Craig. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed the latest edition of the Aerospace Executive Podcast. You can reach out to me directly, Craig at northstaresg.com, or check us out at www.northstaresg.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, or on YouTube. Just do a search for Aerospace Executive Podcast. Thanks again. I'm Craig Pittman.